Hi, I'm Andrew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington, and I'm going to show you how to restring a steel string acoustic guitar. So here are all the things you're going to need. First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to say that while you have the strings off of the guitar, this is an excellent time to use some polish of some sort and clean it, and also to take some lemon oil or fretboard conditioner and condition your fretboard. I like using shop towels for this, but you can also get a microfiber cloth if it's clean. Make sure it's clean. The reason that I use these is because I know that these are clean when I pull them off. I don't know where a microfiber cloth has been sitting unless I've been keeping it in the clean room. Unfortunately, I'm in a workshop. Next, you'll need your guitar strings. You will need a winder to wind the strings, something to cut the strings, and we'll talk about this later. So, I like to start from the bridge end. You notice that I have all of my bridge pins lined up like this very nicely. This isn't so important if you're using plastic bridge pins, but it is important if you're using bone or wood bridge pins or some other kind of custom pin that may or may not fit in every single hole uniformly. You want these going back into the same hole that they came out of. So we're going to go ahead and start from the low E and go ahead and get that down in there and put a pin down. I'm going to hold my finger on the top of the bridge pin and then tug up on the string so that the string ball seats nicely against the bridge plate on the underside of the soundboard, and it doesn't pull the bridge pin out when we try to go tune. That can get pretty annoying. We'll move on to the A string, repeat, to the D, repeat, G, B, and finally the high E string. And what you want to end up with is all of the strings nicely held into the bridge. So now back to this guy. So what I'm going to do with this mechanical pencil loaded with number 2 graphite is I'm going to color in just a little bit of graphite lubricant in the slots that I know belong to wound strings. So the E, A, D, and G strings all get just a little bit of graphite lubricant. And what this does is it helps the strings slide more easily in that slot, which can sometimes grab onto the string windings and prevent uniform tuning. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the low E string, place it through the hole in the tuner post, pull it taut from the bridge, and grab it at the beginning of the post. This is important to get the proper number of windings around the post for the guitar to stay more stably in tune. 3 windings are generally a good amount for the E and A string. So measure 3 windings with 3 fingers, hold it taut. The first winding will go around the top of this string coming through the other side of the post. I bend the strings up to prevent the string from damaging the headstock when I tune. Next, of course, we will move on to the A string. Repeat, pulling taut, and then pulling back, measuring 3 fingers for 3 windings, and again bending the string end up to prevent it from damaging the headstock. Be sure that you're careful to keep your face away from these string ends. They're kind of hard to see when you're focusing on your work, and they will take out your eye if you are not careful. So next we'll move on to the D string, but this time we're going to pull this out and we're going to measure 4 fingers, and that will mean 4 windings on that string. We're taking this first loop by hand around the top of the winding coming out of the other side of the tuning post, and then the remaining winds will go below that tail end of the string. Now, you will also notice that on each of these strings, I have the string coming away from the tuning post and over the nut on the interior side of the tuning post. This is important because that is the direction in which these tuners are designed to resist force. So before I start stringing the other side, what I'm going to show you is cutting off these tails. Now I'm going to wind these around so that I can get the tail clear of the string that we need. The reason that I'm doing this is because I'm sure everyone has done this before, but occasionally you accidentally cut that string and then you're out a whole set of strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this over and then take my diagonal cutters and place them flush against the windings and cut. The reason for the bend is it prevents this little itty bitty sharp barb from pointing directly straight out so that your fingers don't want to get caught on it and end up getting a puncture wound. This has been jokingly called the most common injury in lutherie. But what this will do is it will prevent most of those instances from happening. And who wants to get cut by their guitar? And there you have it. Nice clean cuts. Winding still there, string still there, and they're not going to poke my fingers. So the next thing we're going to do is string the treble side of the guitar, also called the non-player side. And we're going to take the G string, pull it taut, and put 4 windings on it. So measured in 4 fingers, over the top, bending up. The reason that I'm holding over here is so that the string remains taut and the windings look better. The windings can, for the most part, look however they want and still be functional, but I like my windings to look nice because I'm a professional. Next we're going to do the unwound strings, so the B and the E string. What we're going to do is measure these with 5 fingers, so including the thumb, because you want 5 windings on these. These don't have the windings to provide traction, so the more winds you can get, the more stable the tuning is going to be on those strings. And actually that one bent over on me, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off right there. And that's going to prevent that sharp string end from dragging across the top of the headstock and creating a scratch. No one needs that. The graphite lubricant is also less important in these slots because these strings are unwound. These normally don't have the same sort of tuning problems, though occasionally you will need to take measures to prevent a tight nut slot from gripping on the B and the E string. In those cases I might recommend taking it to a local repairman so that they might be able to give you a good recommendation on it. So again, 5 fingers around the top, bending up, holding the string taut. And we'll just get this wound up. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did on the bass side or the player side. Give the strings a good hard tug to one side so that that string end is not facing directly out from the post. Doesn't really matter which direction you go, though. If you want to be uniform about it, I suppose that might make the tail end look a little nicer, but I doubt anybody is actually going to look that closely at it. Throw away the string ends, and you're all set and ready to go with the next step of this procedure. So next, what you want to do is make sure that these strings are fairly taut. Don't have to be anywhere near in tune. But for the next step, what we're going to be doing is stretching the strings. You don't necessarily have to do this, but if you don't, you are going to be putting up with these strings stretching over time, and the guitar won't play very well in tune for the first week that the strings are on it. So let's just nip that in the bud and go ahead and pre-stretch these strings. So I'm going to take these around the 12th fret and just apply a little bit of pressure, mostly with my fingers, just pulling up on the string a little bit. And you'll notice that that actually stretched it out quite a lot. Now, on this G string, keep in mind that the core of this string is very, very thin. And what you don't want to do is apply enough force to break the string. Believe it or not, this is more possible than you would think. So just a little bit of pressure, and that should be plenty to keep these strings more stable when you go to tune it up. So next we're going to tune up the guitar. So I'm going to use this tuning fork to get a rough tuning going, and from there we can use this electric tuner to fine tune the tuning. Let's try that again. Close enough. From there, we'll tune from the 5th fret, or if you can count the beats, you can also do that as well. It's very out of tune, but it's close enough. And then come back and do the low E. Now the reason I do this is because as you're tuning the guitar, you're applying pressure to the neck and pressure to the soundboard. So if you try to get a perfect tune on that A the first time, it's not going to stay that way once you apply tension to the rest of the strings. Next we'll go ahead and we'll use the electric tuner to dial in this tuning. Tuning. Then we'll go back to the A, because that was likely drifted. Sometimes you get lucky. And there you go. You have a newly strung guitar that'll play really, really well until those strings wear out and you need to do this again in a few weeks. So next I want to talk to you about strings. Not quite as complicated as string theory, but there are some things you want to know. Make sure that when you get your new set of strings, that the box on the outside says acoustic. I've gotten strings in here on steel string guitars that were nylon strings. I've gotten acoustics in with electric strings on them, and about every other variation you can think of. The reason that you want acoustic strings is because they pull a much higher tension. They need to move the top of your guitar. In order to do that, they need to pull a lot of weight. Electric strings are not going to work for this, and nylon strings certainly aren't going to work for this. There are two primary options that you have: phosphor bronze and regular bronze acoustic strings. The strings that I have used in this guitar are D'Addario phosphor bronze. The reason that I use D'Addario is because D'Addario strings have a hex core. The hex core prevents any dead spots in the windings on the strings and prevents you from ending up with a dead string right out of the box, which can sometimes happen. Now, the difference between bronze and phosphor bronze is that phosphor bronze has an anti-corrosive in it that will make your strings last longer, particularly if you have acidic skin, which I've noticed a lot of guitar players do. It will also prevent anything damaging your strings if you've just got back from Carl's Jr. or something and you decide that you really need to play your guitar before you wash your hands. But those are your two primary options. And the reason that I go with the phosphor bronze is because it makes my setups last longer for my customers. When I do a setup on a guitar, I want that setup to stay as pristine as possible for as long as possible. And the best setup that you have is with the same strings that were on it when it got set up. Next, what I'll say is that if you have a problem with your guitar where you see windings coming over the top of the bridge, there are guitar strings that are actually wound with silk. They look a little bit like violin strings, and they are made that way to prevent damage to your bridge if you do have those windings coming up over the top of it. And past that, I think that we're done here. I hope you found this video very educational and that it was very helpful. If you do happen to find yourself with problems with your instrument in Seattle, please bring them to Drew's Guitar Shop and I'll see if I can help you out.